The irony, of course, is that more people have probably seen the Tallarico interview than would have seen it ordinarily. I want you to take a listen to something that he said in the course of that interview that I think speaks to the moment we find ourselves in.
This is the party that ran against cancel culture, and now they're trying to control what we watch, what we say, what we read. And this is the most dangerous kind of cancel culture, the kind that comes from the top. Corporate media executives are selling out the First Amendment to curry favor with corrupt politicians. And a threat to any of our First Amendment rights is a threat to all of our First Amendment rights.
So that's where I want to pick up, because I think it's easy to see this as a media story, and it is a media story, but it is fundamentally a First Amendment story.
I agree. And let's not forget Don Lemon and Georgia Fort, who've now been indicted in a conspiracy case for doing journalism. Let's not forget the failed attempt to indict 6 members of Congress for speaking out and exercising their First Amendment rights to say what the law is, to say that members of the military are obligated not to follow illegal orders. And not only do they have a First Amendment right to say that, they are elected members of Congress who are elected for their policy views to speak on these things, right? That's an assault on the First Amendment. Let's not forget the assault on law firms, right? That started almost a year ago already, right? Blacklisting law firms for representing people and causes the president dislikes. This First Amendment assault goes just across the board. It's not just about the media. It is about silencing critics and intimidating others and shutting people up.
Because at the thing that I find so interesting is this is the Don't Tread on Me crowd, and he was talking about that a little bit. The speed at which they went from, it is my First Amendment right to wear a mask and not have to show you whether or not I got a COVID vaccine to get the man off television. But let's move on, because you mentioned Georgia Fort, who was arrested by the Trump administration for covering that protest in Minnesota at that church. She was in court today for her arraignment, and she spoke after talking about the First Amendment and blasting the administration for trying to encroach. Let's listen.
I want the media to understand, as a journalist who is from Minnesota, this case doesn't just leave me fighting for my freedom. It is the government trying to muzzle me, to make me unable to report on one of the most historic cases, not just in our state, but in our country. Reporting where you all know that I would uniquely give voice to the people who are otherwise not being centered in coverage of this case.
Angela, at the end of the day, reporters are about holding powerful people accountable. Comedians and parody are also a form of accountability in the form of culture and showing the American people what's happening in Washington, D.C. All of this, and the connecting thread is that this administration does not want to be held accountable.
Yeah, and I think we talk about these moments, and this is now a reaction to something that already happened. What we don't get to talk about or even know is how many people are holding their punches. How many people who don't have the ability to fight or say, it's just not worth it. I won't do that. He did this interview with James Tallarico, so he was able to publish it on, they were able to put it up on YouTube. Next time, they won't even do it in the first place, right? That's the issue here, is that these sort of moments do create a self-censoring people, because the cost calculus is being adjusted, and that's your point. That is the net effect of all of this. They're sending a message, and it's not just about punishing people they've already done. It's also about making sure that people change their behavior proactively. That's really what they're trying to go for here, and each of these is one little stepping stone along the way.